Graduated from high school, my mother and daddy sent me to Mercer University in Macon. And as a college boy, I was like all the others, always calling home for money. I need some money, Daddy. And he would always come through with the money. But one time I called the telephone office here. Everybody knew her as Aunt Claude. Now, she sat behind a just about that size cabinet with a window over here on this side, and she could sit there all day long in a chair and observe what was going on downtown, as well as taking care of plugging in wherever she was needed to be plugged. Anyway, I called over here one day and I said, Aunt Claude, I want to speak to Daddy. Well, she knew who I was and she knew who Daddy was. But she said, well, son, I'm afraid you can't talk to him right now because I just saw him go across the railroad to the drugstore. But if you stay where you are, when he comes back out of the drugstore, I'll get him in touch with you. So that was the kind of telephone service we had in those days. Now, when I came back here in 1950 and set up my office, I had to have a telephone. Anybody in the law business had to have a telephone. And so they gave me telephone number 7. There's the page out of the telephone directory for the town. Page, and it's on number 7, Ken Askew's office, number 7. Now, about the telephone business, I've already told you about Aunt Claude being able to sit behind the console and could see what was going on down in town. Well, the older boys would go up there at night and tell Aunt Claude what girl they wanted to speak to because they didn't want Mom and Daddy to know who they were courting. And so she would call the girl's number, and so they could talk to him. But one particular time, one of the fellows asked us, I want to speak to Susie Jones. Well, honey, ain't no use to call her. She's already got a date tonight. She could keep up with everything going on in town. And, of course, it's precious to think about it nowadays. Or either it's you wouldn't dare suggest that kind of a telephone exchange now. But along did come the time when they changed over to the rotary phone with the numbers on it. And of course, those days made things different. All right, these were the kind of phones that we had at that time. Mine was set up on the box right there, and we had to crank the crank, and Aunt Claude would answer. And you'd tell them what number you wanted or what person you wanted. We didn't go by numbers in that day and time. That came along later with when we got educated. But anyway, the telephone system worked for us in that day and time. This particular telephone was used in one of the stores where the storekeeper would have his little pad right here on this, right here. And when we called, we could always get the store, and the store would deliver groceries. Well, one of the days that Marguerite called Mr. Patrick and said, Mr. Patrick, I want so-and-so, and put it in an order. And after a while, Marguerite had called Mr. Patrick and said, Mr. Patrick, where's my order? Well, I don't know. I sent Bus out with it some time ago. So we called Bus in and said, Bus, what did you do with Ms. Askew's order? Well, I took it to her. Well, now, Ms. Askew said you never did get it to her. Well, them cats must have been in the wrong yard. And that's what had happened. They'd go, our house was right next door to Mother's house. And Bus knew everybody by the animals, I guess, as well as the house numbers. But anyway, old Bus was quite an institution around here. Them cats must have been in the wrong yard. 1950, 51, 52, it was a great surge on to consolidate the schools. And I had threatened to get out here and get up money to send Bus to Washington. Let him go talk to the president. Of course, I didn't ever do that, but I thought maybe the president would get a great kick out of Bus's explanation. Now, Mr. Patrick would tell me that one time he sent Bus. It was a baseball playoff time, and he sent Bus up to his house to get his radio so he could hear the ball game. So Bus was gone and gone and gone. Mr. Patrick finally went up there, and Bus was taking the telephone off the wall. I don't know how he figured we'd get the baseball game on the telephone, but he was doing what he thought was the thing to do. Bus was just that kind, though. He was willing, but he didn't have much knowledge.